You have signed an agreement, and it was largely praised as a watershed moment for Ethiopia.
The Somali people were fighting the Ethiopian state almost in the early 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s.
Do you believe the federal government accepted you as in the ONLF?
The Somali question, because of its wider implication in the Horn of Africa, had a very, very central role in conflicts in Ethiopia.
What we saw is the rise of state-backed alternative ONLF faction in Jijjiga.
The question of Ethiopia is beyond an individual.
You believe that the prime minister was a genuine?
Exactly, the old pattern was repeating itself. We had constitution, we had beautiful laws in Ethiopia for the last 50, 40 years.
What was creating that crackdown? Why was your party targeted?
The PPUA is another party we are competing with. You cannot endorse their program and call yourself ONLF.
How should the Somali question should be resolved first? Because that is what you said in March 2025. No justice, no oil.
Since Haile Selassie, elections were held. Always there was election. And it looks like, the idea of election doesn't bring democracy.
Welcome to the Standard Signal. I am your host, Tsedale Lemma. In October 2018, in the Eritrean capital, Asmara, the Ethiopian government and the Ogaden National Liberation Front, ONLF, signed what was widely described at that time as a historic peace agreement. It was meant to close one of Ethiopia's longest conflicts, to end decades of armed conflict in the Somali region, and to open a new chapter, one that defined not by guns, but by politics. For the ONLF, the deal carried a clear promise that the political rights of the Somali people would be addressed through peaceful democratic participation. For the federal government, it marked the symbolic end of an insurgency. For Ethiopians watching at the time, it was part of a broader moment of hope that old wars could finally give way to dialogue. 7 years later, that promise is under serious question. The ONLF says the peace agreement has been systematically disabled. Its offices have been repeatedly shut down, its members arrested. Some of its leaders were even held incommunicado for months. The party itself is tested through state-recognized rival factions, and its political space, once promised, has steadily narrowed. At the same time, the Somali region has re-emerged at the center of Ethiopia's resource ambitions. Oil and gas projects, once suspended, are back on the table. Foreign investors are returning. A multi-billion-dollar deal was recently signed. The ONLF insists that this is not a coincidence. It argues political exclusion and resource extraction are now moving in parallel, that the peace deal was never meant to empower Somali voters, especially its constituencies, but to neutralize the resistance ahead of resource exploitation. The government, for its part, says it is pursuing development, stability, and national interest. This is the tension we are examining today. Not simply whether the ONLF is united or divided, not only whether its leadership disputes are internal or induced, but whether Ethiopia's post-2018 peace framework has become a pattern. Disarm first, promise democracy, and manage politics through control. And more fundamentally, what happens when peace agreements are treated as endpoints rather than beginnings? Can a peace deal survive if one side is gradually removed from the political marketplace? Can elections be meaningful when opposition parties are fragmented through administrative power? And can development be legitimate when consent is contested? These are not abstract questions. They go to the heart of Ethiopia's once promising multinational federal experiment and to whether peaceful politics is still a viable path for historically marginalized regions. My guest today is Dr. Abdirahman Mahdi, chairman of the Ogaden National Liberation Front. I'll ask him directly where he believes the peace process broke down, who bears responsibility, and what comes next for the ONLF, for Somali region, and for Ethiopia's fragile political dispensation. Dr. Abdirahman, welcome to the Standard Signal. It's my honor to have you on my podcast.
Pleasure also to talk to you, Madam Tsedale. It's the second time you had an interview with me. So, and also I respect very much Addis Standard, which is one of the best media outlets in Ethiopia that is closer to the truth than most of the others.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdirahman. Yes, I do remember having an exclusive interview with you. I think it was back in 2020, and we were still, shall I say, at the peak of our optimism, pragmatism for a peaceful political transition in Ethiopia. So here we are, 5 years down the line. We wanted to establish the moral and political baseline of what exactly happened to the ONLF. So in October 2018, as I said in my introduction, you have signed an agreement, and it was largely praised as a watershed moment for Ethiopia. You yourself, I think the statement by the ONLF said that it is a peace agreement that would be addressing the root cause of the conflict. You expressed quite a large, I think, list of optimism with regard to the constitutional order and federalism and also. So 5 years down the line, or even 7 years since you have signed that agreement, I want to ask you, what happened? What went wrong, Dr. Abdirahman? If you could briefly mention to me, but before we do that, you can start by introducing yourself and your relationship to the ONLF as a party. Could you tell my audience where you come from and how you happen to be the president of the ONLF, briefly, before you start addressing my question? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Tsedale. My name is Abdirahman Mahdi. Mahdi is my grandfather, my surname. I was one of the youth. I was a member of the youth movement, which I started a long time ago, almost 1972. I was one of the young. I joined the youth movement when I was 16 years, and the youth movement morphed into the Western Somali Liberation Union Youth Movement in 1970s, and then early 1980s, we were disgruntled with the status quo of the WSLF. So we formed ONLF, Ogaden National Liberation Front, in August 15, 1984. And at that time, I was the leading figure pushing that movement, head of the 15,000 youth group and some individuals from the Central Committee of WSLF. So that was the first time I became chairman of ONLF. At that time, it was an ad hoc committee from 1984 to 1986. And 1986, I was a bit too young, so I decided that I will defer, the seat to other elderly members of our organization members. And ever since, I have been taking many roles: finance, foreign affairs, advocacy. And by 2019, and after being almost 15 years head of the foreign department of ONLF, I was elected Secretary General, and in 2018 July. And then when we come back in to Ogaden in 2019, end of 2018, start of 2019, within 1 year, the chairman, who at that time felt that he could no longer continue the organization, we decided to hold a Congress, and I was elected chairman again of ONLF in a Congress held in Godi. I think it was November 12, 2019. And ever since I was the chairman. And so that is my history. I've taken almost, I was in the struggle for the last 52 years, 53 years. So the struggle is my life, actually. That is who I am.
Thank you. I'm sure you have an illustrious career other than the ONLF itself, but even within the ONLF, this is, I think you know the history of the party, where it all began. I think many of us are very familiar with its history. But I am interested today to focus our conversation, Dr. Abdirahman, in the post-2018 dispensation, when you came back to Ethiopia, as you said now, beginning of 2019, because the peace deal that was signed in Asmara itself was signed on October 21st, if I'm not mistaken. So I think my question is, if I'm not repeating myself here, when you have signed that peace agreement in Asmara, to end, the ONLF's engagement in the military activities in the Somali region is one of the longest running conflicts there. So when you signed that agreement, did you believe the federal government accepted you as in the ONLF? Because at that time you were listed as a terrorist organization. Right, so it was quite a leap forward for the federal government to accept you as a legitimate political competitor. But in hindsight today, do you believe that it was just a genuine acceptance, or only as a force to be neutralized later, serve the PR purpose and then systematically neutralized later out of the marketplace of the politics, when you look at it, when you reflect at it today, Dr. Abdirahman?
Well, ONLF believed it was entering a genuine and historic peace process intended to confront the political roots of a conflict that extended for more than a century. The Somali people were fighting the Ethiopian state almost in the early 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. So, and even before that, even during Menelik's time, there was always a confrontation. So we saw that this is an opportune moment to end that conflict in a peaceful way and start a new chapter in Ethiopia. So that, the Asmara Declaration, we believe it committed both parties to end hostilities, to pursue objective peacefully under constitutional protection, and establish joint mechanism to address the root causes of that conflict. That was what we believed. And from our perspective, it was never about silencing guns. It was about transitioning from a violent confrontation into a peaceful political dispensation where all the root causes of this conflict can be tackled, and a new chapter started in Ethiopia. Because as ONLF, we believe the Ogaden coast or the Somali coast has been a core conflict in Ethiopia. From, if you understand, most of what happens in Ethiopia starts in the east. That's what we say. You can see, more of the major parties that have changed the course of Ethiopia, whether TPLF or EPLF or even before that, the struggle that started in the Ogaden and Somali region, was a driving factor in other conflicts, whether OLF or Oromia or in Tigray or in other areas, always in Eritrea even before that. So the Somali question, because of its wider implication in the Horn of Africa, had a very, very central role in conflicts in Ethiopia. So we believed the current change in Ethiopia will actually bring a new history, a new paradigm of change, a new peace. Because the other factor was the main protagonist of this, change in Ethiopia was Oromo forces that actually rebelled, in the last, 16 and 17, 2016, 17, 18, and we believe that we had a common cause. We are together oppressed. So we believe a new era will usher that time. But, and that key issues will be tackled. Like, for example, why was this conflict always going there? The root causes, the issues of, resources, the issue of democracy in Ethiopia, this paradigm of one state or one group always ruling the country and always having a tyranny, all these things. So there was hope, not only among us, even other parties. We were together in allies with OLF, with Gimbot, 7 others. So there was a big hope in Ethiopia, even the people. So that was why we exactly believe there was a change of mood in Ethiopia. So that was our
Yeah.
belief.
Yeah, I remember, I think when I met you, maybe it was in 2019, perhaps when we met in person, Dr. Abdirahman, or prior to that, you said, I think it was in August 2019, that Prime Minister Abiy, that you believed that Prime Minister Abiy was genuine, and that, as you said it now, that the question which is at the heart of many national groups in Ethiopia, which is the right to self-administer, the right to manage your resources, the right to participatory democracy. These are the long historical grievances that are, as you say it now, in the heart of the struggle of the Oromo people, or the Somali people, or even in Tigray, the people of Eritrea. So you expressed quite an optimism, and you said you believe that the Prime Minister was a genuine actor in this. You were very much upbeat about it. At what exact point did you conclude that this genuineness had ended? And when you look back, was ONLF's restraint? Because I think one of the things that you did was to immediately disarm your members as soon as you came back, and you wanted to hold the end of the bargain from your side. So you disarmed it and you went into politics of restraint. So I guess my question is, at what point did you understand that there is no genuineness in the politics, which has seen you now being gradually removed from the political marketplace of ideas in the Somali region? When did you realize that this was not genuine, Dr. Abdirahman?
Well, as a person, Abiy Ahmed is one individual in a cog. What we saw and we discovered soon was the question of Ethiopia is beyond an individual. It's a paradigm system that was built on injustice, tyranny, and systematic, suppression of democracy. And any leader who goes into that, system, immediately he was caught up in that system. So what we saw immediately, this culture, there's this cultural, problem in Ethiopia that always those in power, even when you look at the attitude of the people, it looks like the government owns the people. The government, instead of the people owning the government, there's this attitude, the attitude of, deferring to the government. And people, even when you see them, when you approach them, I've seen the Ethiopian opposition, I've seen even Somalis, I've seen others in everywhere. This culture that the government owns the people. And I believe, any leader who comes there and, falls into this trap, power is very, very seductive. So I believe what we believe in actually, well, when we look at how the steps, the Abiy took initially, dismantling, banning all the, the liberation fronts, the way he was speaking, the promises that was made, the optimism of the whole people, the whole Horn of African, optimism, the change in Eritrea, the border issues, how that issue was addressed. So there was a big hope among all the people, not only us, but even other parties. I've met with other Gimbo's party members. I've met, with Andrew Gajusege. I've met with, ONLF leaders. I've seen others also from Sidama, from others. There was a hope of change, that Abiy was genuine about it, that this is going to change. But what immediately we saw when we came there, the first thing we, for example, experienced it, part of our agreement was to form a joint committee at federal level and regional level to address the root causes. Immediately, it was totally ignored. Nobody would talk to us about the peace agreement. Everything was about disarm. Okay, we disarmed, everything changed. But what we saw is just empty talks. What immediately after the first few months, we started seeing, the change, that it was all noise and no substantive movement toward peace, toward disarmament, toward transitional justice, toward, even the way, the regional administration was formed, how, the regional administrator was behaving. within 2 months, they started insulting us in the public media. We had no right to talk in the Somali. There was only one media anyway in Somali. These state media, and it was monopolized. All the experiences and stuff were changed. Specific groups were put there, and immediately they started vilifying, insulting us, and you could not believe people who came with peace, disarmed, and brought a historic change. Suddenly, they started acting like they were masters, and we were just the dregs of the place. So we saw within few months there's a change. That's what happened.
I guess, listening to you, there probably was at the peak of that enthusiasm and also pragmatism for politics of change. I think many of us probably misread the structural changes that were happening. One of the highly anticipated events to happen in the post-2018 was the election. And I remember Dr. Abdirahman in 2019, again, to take you back there, the ONLF as a party called for elections to take place on time. And your party issued a statement warning against election, postponing the election, but also if the elections were not to happen, no political transition without proper integration of the parties that have signed the peace agreement with the government. I think that warning, in hindsight now, was a very valid warning. What we saw instead were elections without the ONLF. In fact, elections without the ONLF, the OFC. What did you think? Did we miss an opportunity for not heeding the call that was issued by the ONLF regarding postponement of the election, and if the elections were to be postponed, sort of like an all-inclusive or an integration of all political actors into the body politic of Ethiopia? Do you feel vindicated 5 years down the line? And we're looking at another election about which we could probably say a few things later on, Dr. Abdirahman. Do you feel vindicated today with the way the country unraveled since 2020, the wars, the conflicts in many places that don't seem to be dying out any time? Do you feel vindicated? I think that's what I wanted to ask you now.
Definitely. What we were hoping was a paradigm change, a systematic change of the all status quo. Well, the reason why we were calling for the election to be postponed and all parties to come together and create a new social contract, create a new paradigm, a change because what we saw is exactly the old pattern was repeating itself. We had constitution, we had beautiful laws in Ethiopia for the last 50, 40 years. And the problem is they're all on paper, but they never implemented. Only, as I told before, a group of people take the helm of the country, and immediately they just do their own. They only apply the oppressive part of those constitution or those laws. So what we expected was, and what we were discussing with the government was, maybe instead of the EPRDF structure minus TPLF being continued, and that's what happened. There will have been a more inclusive government where the major opposition, major stakeholders, actually, not only opposition. We having 60 parties is not an opposition, but they are key parties that have got the consent of the people that can change the paradigm in Ethiopia. What we are expecting to come together and create a transitional period where a truly genuine democratic dispensation can be built up. And then after that, when we settle the country, when we understand each other, when there's a better social contract, then an election can be held. Because as you remember, since Haile Selassie, elections were held. Always there was election. And it looks like, the idea of election doesn't bring democracy. It's the will of the people that brings democracy. When the will of the people is respected and they choose their electoral leaders freely, that's what's called democracy. It's not when you just put ballots box and then you manipulate and fill the box and you say I won 90%. I remember one time, in 2015, I don't know, in the election, the ruling party won 99.9%. Actually, there was one guy, I don't know, who was in the previous time opposition. They couldn't tolerate it, so they took 100%. So that's the type of election that was happening. So what we saw was the same pattern being repeated. That was why we were worried that the election will be like that.
I think, even to talk about the election, I remember the hurdles that you faced, the ONLF faced in terms of registration itself, getting your certificate from the National Electoral Board of Ethiopia at that time, the hurdles were. But then it didn't stop there. Dr. Abdirahman, you might enlighten us more. Police crackdown in the Somali regions against your party started as early as October 2020, right? What we saw from April to June 2025, 5 years down the line, is this very perpetual pattern of crackdown against your party leaders, crackdown against your offices. But it started already in October 2020 because we were reporting it then. I think even for electoral democracy, you didn't have it easy, even after you've signed and your party was removed from the list of terrorist organizations that, alongside the ONLF and the Gumbot 7 in 2018. You didn't have it easy, even for electoral, participation. But then, as I said, the police crackdown in the Somali regional state, closure of your offices in Nogob, in Jarar, in Karhay, and then, Dr. Abdirahman, what we saw is the rise of state-backed alternative ONLF faction in Jijiga. The regional government is, I would say, I think you said, even if I can quote you, the Somali regional government is using tactics of intimidation. This is what you told our publication in October of 2020. And you said it is doing so to push the ONLF into breaking the peace agreement. These are the words that you said in October of 2020. You must have felt, surely, as early as 2020, but you still remained given chances to politics of restraint. Walk us down the line. What was creating that crackdown? Why was your party targeted, Dr. Abdirahman? Why were your offices being closed, your senior party leaders being arrested and kept incommunicado, as early as the last June, July even? Why do you think is the reason behind that?
We were pushed on two sides. First of all, we have been at war for almost 23 years. The Somali state of Ogaden has been 23 years in a very vicious war with the state, where many people were displaced, where many people, lost their lives. We had orphans, we have families of, martyrs. We have got people who were victims of the war. So the one pressure was that how to reintegrate them. That question, and the transitional justice was pushing us on one side. Our people were demanding, why did you agree on peace? What did you have for us? We see nothing. We got nothing from peace agreement. Our property was destroyed. About many people's houses, other people are living in their houses. Even some of our fighters' wives were taken over by other men, including their children. So there was so much hurdle ONLF was facing internally, trying to solve through the renegotiation, all these things, which was blocked. On top of that, the political dispensation, which was a key aspect of the agreement, was also thwarted. The federal government closed the door. Nobody was talking to us. First of all, the regional government was attacking us physically and also politically, economically, and also through the media. So this pressure was building. And one reason why that was happening, because our popular base was very strong. Our people, they could feel the support ONLF was having at that time. And that is why, systematically they decided at first during the election. First of all, I like to thank Madam Pertukan, who was a very, very good woman, who suffered also herself. When we decided to participate in the election, they first blocked our candidates to be registered. They tried to use money to bribe them. They tried to intimidate them, and they tried to detain them. So Pertukan called us and said, "We will register your candidates in Addis Ababa. They don't have to go to the pools at the regional to register themselves," because she saw what was happening there. We succeeded in registering 240 out of 330. When they saw that, they saw, this is very dangerous. It is against, because they knew if we go, there was at least even a semblance of a proper election, things will change. So what happened was, because the government refused to allow the donors to send, observers, as you remember, under the pretext of taking radios or something like that, that was stopped. The funding stopped, support from those donors. So the Navy was forced to take funding from the regional administrations. So what happened? So they become victims to them. So when the voting cards were brought for the registration of the voters, the police and these quangos of the regional administration who are managing the regional administration took all the cards and took them to secret place and filled them. So our supporters, our members, and all the normal population were refused to have any cards. When we complained to NEBE, a team was sent. They investigated it. They found the reality. Actually, I saw a woman crying in Kabdare when they saw what was happening. They were sending young people who are very genuine. When the result was taken back, we know the force PP put its major force on NEBE to not publish what was seen. So finally, NEBE decided, the election will continue. Nothing happened. So finally, we saw that it was just they wanted our name there that we participated, but they were going to steal it. So should we give them our name? So we said we cannot participate in an election like this. An election should be a fair and free election. It's not there. So from that time onwards, the pressure started to build up. They continued. The national dialogue issue came. We said, we have seen, you have stolen the election. We said, we will not take up this because we'll give you time. We want peace. We want dialogue. We want to change things. But they still continued. Then they started building the National Election Commission. All the parties said we have to take part in decision of the national. Since this is conciliation, this is an opportunity we cannot be lost. But they also butchered it. They just nominated their own whom they wanted, and it became just a farce. As you see in national election. So that was another opportunity lost. So when they saw us,
ONLF was one of the parties that issued a joint statement when it comes to the National Dialogue Commission and the appointment of its leaders. You were part of you joined other opposition groups in the country.
At the same time, we tried to negotiate with them. At the same time, we tried to mediate even with the COP, with others. We took an extra mile, but finally we felt they just, adhered to their policies. And finally, when they saw that ONLF has got a popular support and that they could not, deal with us, they now decided to attack ONLF, to do a coup within ONLF. That's what they tried to do. That was the harassment, the detentions, all this prelude to change the ONLF leadership.
I'll come back to that because this is the parallel faction that was established with the full consent and support of the regional government. And also, if you follow the way with which the federal government's national media promoted the formation of this parallel ONLF group in the Jijjiga, in the capital city of Somali region. I must ask, Dr. Abdirahman, given what you have went through in post-2018, how is this different from pre-2018 counterinsurgency tactics, other than maybe the brief moment of pragmatism after you've signed the peace agreement, other than the language maybe used to justify that peace agreement? Is it safe for me to ask you if there is any difference from, between post-2018 and pre-2018 counterinsurgency tactics and post-2018 peace agreement? I know it's a fine line to walk, but I'll be interested to know if you could just give your analysis of that, Dr. Abdirahman.
Yeah. First of all, what was happening to us was not isolated only to ONLF. We have seen our colleagues in ONLF, how Dawood was detained and made house arrest, how ONLF was also muddled, and, a group created within ONLF. It happened even within Gimbot 7, how Gimbot 7 was divided and dismantled. So this was all a systematic program against all the opposition parties to weaken them, to divide them so that they can become just only nominal. First of all, the only difference for us as ONLF was some other parties were armed, but since we are fully disarmed, they could not use certain counterinsurgent tactics except the political ones. So it was exactly the same in 1995. That's exactly what happened. The EP did that. We had 5 times ONLF chairman. They created 5 ONLFs from the last 20 years. From 1995, the first when we went to they attacked us and closed our offices, they created their own ONLF, and then another group was created. It didn't work. Another group was created. So this was the same pattern. Try to weaken, divide, and vilify so that you can control them. But unfortunately for them, ONLF was not created by a government or a state or a political state agency. ONLF was created by the people, by the Somali people, and it outlasted how many regimes, Mengistu, Meles, even Somalia, all this. So ONLF stands for the core of Somali people, for justice and their self-determination, for their right to live in peace, in dignity, like other communities in North Africa. So they were doing this, but because we had no guns, they could not use certain tactics, but they used it to the maximum. Other tactics, they detain us, they imprison our members, they closed our office, attacked our offices, they vilified us. They created their own ONLF now. They have got another chairman for ONLF. Few individuals from our organization who chose, post or something like that. But it's insignificant in our struggle. It didn't change anything. If you will have seen the 1941 anniversary for ONLF, more than 60 countries were celebrated in such a very, 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 very brilliant way. 110 positions in the Ogaden inside the Somali region. 110, almost 80 districts in the Somali region. ONLF was celebrated despite their attempt to stop it. So they were using that, but they couldn't stop. It's a mass movement. ONLF is not an individual, not Abdirahman, not anybody. It's the will of the people. Like they cannot stop also the other movement in Amhara region or in Oromia. The people are, disgruntled. Nobody can silence people. These are people's right. The Ethiopian people have a right to have a democratic dispensation. And that's why we are standing, all of us. We want to get a real democratic rule which respects its laws, its constitutions, which respect the right of peoples to self-determination, to rule themselves, to manage their own resources, to live together in peace with their neighbors. That's what we want. But unfortunately, this paradigm always comes back again. One-man rule, one party rule, and it's not going to work. It doesn't work anywhere in the world. The Soviet Union was the biggest. It couldn't work. It was dismantled. So such type of system.
To come back to the question of resource, Dr. Abdirahman, a bit later, because one of, as I closely watched the dynamics of the politics in the regional state there, one of the, shall I say, the Achilles heel within the ONLF was, the internal dynamics, which I should be very careful about separating your internal political dynamics from the external manipulations. One of the reasons that makes me to say so is the former chairman of the ONLF, Admiral Mohammed Omar, he resigned in November 2019. And then there were some internal dynamics. And I think the parallel establishment started already back then, the parallel establishment of the ONLF party, starting from your Twitter account, for example. There was a parallel Twitter account that was created immediately. I guess it was even as early as that time. And this was one of the areas that was, I think, exploited by the regional administration there, by the endorsement of the rival faction at a critical moment. I want to ask you, related to this, hence, do you have any relationship? Because what we saw also is after this internal dynamics, we have seen individuals joining the federal government, individuals that were at high-ranking levels of the party joining the federal government. In July, after the July's Jijiga conference, I think the party denounced that that's what an orchestrated takeover. I'm quoting you right now here. So we see that pattern of divide and neutralize strategy, using the internal party disputes to control the party's dynamics. How is the ONLF trying to recover this manufactured opposition, takeover, if I can use your own terms in that, orchestration of takeover of the party? How are you managing that? How is the party's status as we speak now, Dr. Abdirahman?
Well, the party is at its strongest position. We are both in the diaspora and inside the Ogaden and the Horn of Africa. Our party is a dominant party, with our members actually doubling. Even people who are not part of the party joined the party when they saw what the government was doing. They finally realized it. These groups initially were claiming that about corruption, about whatever they were using, the language they were using, tribalism, they were using all these tactics. But when the people who actually who claim to be ONLF actually are getting jobs in the PP administration, they were given administration both at the federal level and at the regional level. And they know the history of these organizations. They know who are leading these organizations. So individuals, low-level individuals who are not very much known, or who are just second-tier levels, who are co-opted, corrupted, and joined them. Many people have finally understood what the whole PP, what it stands for, what it's trying to do. And you cannot create a party by edict. By government edict, you cannot create that. A party comes from, as I told you, from the grassroots, from people, and so it doesn't change anything for us. Our struggle is now sharpening. We are in a position now, to work with other opposition groups, key stakeholders in Ethiopia, and we are considered one of the key stakeholders. We are more powerful. We are more stronger than before. Our constituency has grown. Our funding has grown, our support has grown. The international community understands what happened, and also the Ethiopian people see who is a genuine, who is really standing for the people. We are not praising a party which is not our party. How can you be ONLF and then be part of PP? The PP is another party we are competing with. You cannot endorse their program and call yourself ONLF. A party has a program, has got an objective, has got the intentions. So if you don't do that, then go against it, then you cannot claim your ONLF. So our party is much more stronger. We are doing well, and we didn't actually dent our support. And really, because we stand for what was there. The root cause of the conflict is still there. The rights of our people are missing. Our people are suffering economically, politically. Their resources are being exploited without their knowledge, consent, or free will. As you see, there's all these, what they call the finance police. If you see what they do in Jijiga and everywhere, they loot the people, they take whatever they want. So the whole paradigm, the operation, the martial law is still in the Ogaden. From the 60s, still the same laws are applied there. The army actually is the key there. And the new policy is also there, oppressing the people. So nothing has changed. So people are now much more aware than before. Mm-hmm. And they listen to what we say because we stand for their rights.
Yeah. One of the interesting points that I heard from those who are supporting about the rise of the parallel ONLF, when I'm discussing with a lot of stakeholders about it, is that this can still be treated as a pluralism, given the clan dynamics. It's a very vibrant dynamic. The Somali community has a very vibrant clan dynamic. So there is this idea of entertaining the state-supported, the state-backed parallel organization ONLF on the ground there, treating it as a pluralism. I doubt that is, I believe that is replacing the original ONLF with a controllable replica of itself. That's what I believe, and I think what you're saying here proves that. Dr. Abdirahman, I wanted to come to because you just mentioned it briefly now about the resource. We know the history. In 2007, for example, the ONLF organized the attack against foreign resource plunder in the region, which resulted in that scorched earth military campaign against the people in Ogaden, especially, for almost 10 years. And we seem to be, I wanted to recenter the conflict of the political economy now, because to me, that seems to be the real fault line. In March of this year, the ONLF released a statement following a meeting between Chinese oil company GTL, or I forgot the name now, and the meeting between the regional governments. And in that statement, you said there is no justice, there is no resource extraction. The issue of justice being still an outstanding request from your party. So I want us to recenter this conversation into that dynamics of resource extraction. I want to hear from you the Poly GCL, the Chinese that has that troubled history in the Ogaden region and oil extraction there. I think it was registered and deregistered and registered and deregistered again. But finally, now we have a new deal that involves another foreign company yet. Your framing of this is that political rights must come before extraction of natural resources. I think that's what I understood from your statement. What do you mean by that? If you could tell us in clear language, where does the Somali question, how should the Somali question should be resolved first? Because that is what you said in March 2025. No justice, no oil. The Somali question must be resolved first. Tell us more about it, Dr. Abdirahman.
First of all, this is a interconnected issue. The root cause of the conflict. It's about marginalization. It's about cultural rights. 99% of our people don't speak Amharic, and if you come to Jigjiga or anywhere in the Ogaden, the federal offices are all spoken in Amharic. And the all woman who comes there wants to get a service from the bank doesn't understand. She has to hire a translator, and that's not cultural rights. For example, those one of the issues. For example, like the minimum, the least one is like that. The other one is marginalization. If you look at the Ogaden, only 200 students passed it out of 16,000 this year. Last year, 24 passed it out of 22,000. 400 passed it out of 22,000 students. How can an education system where, which is fair and reasonable, out of 16,000 students, only 400 can pass? Less than 3% of the student population. So you see, that's because of the marginalization that happened to our people through almost a century. The other one is trade rights. We traded 90% with Somalia. We get almost less than 10% from the highlands comes to our country. So everything that we trade with Somalia is contraband. It can be easily confiscated. So our people are always in constant harassment along the border. They cannot trade their livestock. They cannot trade their resources. So all these are tied up. And when it comes to natural resources, What we believe is the natural resource is the right of the people. The Somali people have a right to their resources. We are in a federation. This federation, if there's gold in Oromia, the Oromo people have a right to exploit it. If there's gold or in Tigray, it's like that. There must be a prior informed consent when exploitation is coming. Then we can accept when there's people who can truly represent the Somali people. The current regional administration doesn't represent. It was not properly elected. So when there's a true representation, the federal allocation should be there between the regions or the states and the center. But just if we write a constitution that we never approve it, and we say, okay, all the land belongs to the federal government, that people have no rights, and then the government comes to take everything. That's not acceptable. It doesn't happen all over the world. It happened in Aceh. If you look at Aceh, if you look at Indonesia, if you look at even developed countries like Canada, every state, the resources, the key, agreement has to come from the state and the federal state. There's a clear share promulgated in law. Let us say 10% is taken by this, 10% is taken by that. Very clear. Nothing. Even Abiy, when he came down last time, he said we were hiding it from Somalis when we were trying to open the factory. So he's hiding our resource from us. That's not acceptable. When a resource is to be exploited, it must be through the consent of our people. There must be a clearly agreed, shareholding agreement between us and the federal government. What factors, what share has the people of the Ogaden or the Somali people have? What share goes to the federal government? Exactly like it will happen there, like when it's in Oromia or in Benishangul or in Tigray or Amhara or Afar or Sidama or any other southern states. That's what we are fighting for. It's not only for Somalis. What we say is resources are not for the federal government. Federal government is just, the federal government comes from the people, the states. So there's nothing like they're making the federal government another entity, another colonial government. It's our federal government. So the basis of the power is in the regions, not in the federal government. And they are trying to take all the power to the center, away from the states, which have a right through the constitution. And the other one is about the self-rule.
Maybe having such a strong political viewpoint, it contributed to the gradual, elimination almost from the political marketplace of ideas in the Somali region. Do you believe it contributed that your party holds such a view? I think in March, you've already warned the poly-GCL, which is no longer in the picture today, of repercussions, right? These are the words from your statement. Do you think that the coincidence of this political repression and your eventual, removal systematically from the political space in the region is precisely because, or is it a coincidence that when the gas and oil project is returned to the region, that you are systematically removed? Is it because you hold such a strong view about resource distribution in the region?
It's not only that, it's the whole idea. PP doesn't want any political opposition which is genuine, can stand for the right of the people, which can stand for democratic rights. So PP sees threat, they see ONLF as a threat, they see TPLF as a threat, they see ONLF, the genuine ONLF, real genuine ONLF as a threat. So they see other parties like that. They don't want those parties to challenge their rule, including not only economic, political, and social. What they want is compliant parties that will get the little amount given by Nebe, and then when the election comes, they say, okay, the election was fair, and the rest, they just watch the drama in Addis Ababa. That's the type of party they want. They don't want a genuine party that can challenge them politically, economically, and socially. So this is part of that. The oil is also part of that. But the key was where they started actually targeting us from the day we came, because they know our position. We are a genuine opposition party. We are standing for the rights of our people. Not only that, we are standing for the rights of all Ethiopian people. We want Amharas to live in peace. We want Tigray to live in peace. We want Oromo to live in peace. We want the southern people to live in peace. We want to have a democratic polity that can bring peace to the whole of Africa. That is our position. We are not only fighting for the right of Somalis. We are part of the UNPO. UNPO is the unrepresented people of the world. More than 300 million people from 50 nations all over the world. We are part of that. We stand for the right of self-determination for all nations. So they don't like that. They don't want a party that is strong. Polity has got a strong backing and a strong position on that. That's why they try to sideline us, to throw us out. But they abysmally failed. We are here. We are not moving away. And now we are taking part in, we are actually going to join real opposition parties to bring change in Ethiopia, real democratic change. We are not going to sit around and idly. Actually, now we are free to do whatever we want.
In June, following June this year, June 2025, following the detention and incommunicado status of your senior party members, you warned of consequences. Right? From my understanding, it's the risk of returning to securitized governors or even armed struggle again. You might correct me if I misread your statement when you warned about consequences of having such incessant crackdown against your party leaders. What is peace means then? If you are entering this territory in which your party is systematically sidelined, what does peace signify to the ONLF currently as you stand now? Or is entertaining a possibility of returning back to the armed struggle is still a possibility within the ONLF?
Well, peace without consent is postponement. It delays conflict rather than resolving it, erodes trust between parties and lays the groundwork for deeper, more severe confrontation. When impose it without arrangement, when imposed with arrangement, that is inevitable. What we see as ONLF is peace is interest for all people, including the federal government, all Ethiopian people, all other parties, all other regions. But peace cannot be sustained when one party only. You cannot have peace alone. Alone cannot have peace. Peace needs two partners. At least means multi-partners. If one side persists on peace, the other is not doing peace, the risk of conflict increases. And actually now that's what we are afraid of. That's what we've been warning about. Our members are so much disgruntled. We don't know what will come tomorrow because the people have lost now in peace. And what alternatives? We will. For us, we are determined to keep the peace. But as an option, we are not ruling out other alternatives. If this continues, we don't know what will happen in the future. But for us, peace will be the ideal. We have seen war. We know what war means. We don't have any appetite for war. But the federal government and both the PP in general is forcing us to the wall, and we don't know where will that end. That's a problem.
Yeah. Given your experience for decades as a party, participant in different positions. What's going to happen to Ethiopia? I'm winding down my questions now, Dr. Abdirahman. What do you see is going to happen to Ethiopia's multinational federalism? When peaceful opposition like yourself is removed, but grievances remain, right? When peace agreements force one party to selectively use them, and the other party to consider itself not bound by it anymore, what happens because I remember your enthusiasm about how your party is going to work very hard to have a genuine multinational federalism in Ethiopia, which was at that time, what you said was like, it was good on paper, but it has never been implemented. Where do you see what happens to it now? You mentioned about working with other political groups, opposition political groups, or maybe even non-political groups together. Where do you see that that's going to lead Ethiopia's multinational federalism, the way, given the trajectory we are at now, when, if this is the definition of peace that we have?
After 7 years of good faith effort, it's clear now the current government has no interest in political solution or negotiate settlement. For everybody, not only ONLF. Everybody, every opposition, really genuine opposition, is now feeling that. We are feeling that the government has no interest in political solution or negotiate settlement. A dialogue, as I told you, requires partners, but we don't have partners. Therefore, accordingly, as ONLF, we have now joined broader alliances that are preparing to bring democratic change and challenge the authoritarian rule. That's our only option. We remain committed to justice, constitutionalism, and the will of the people, but we will not pretend that unilateral restraint can replace a real political process while repression and violence continues. So for us now, we are now actually joining other forces to bring a democratic change in Ethiopia. So far, we are discussing with other major parties abroad and inside the country. Because now we no longer have any faith in the system now, and we believe now the only way forward is unless we all come together and join together and bring change. The whole Horn of Africa will implode. It's not only Ethiopia is a cracks in the Horn of Africa, and unless we bring change, it will affect not only us, even all eager countries. You know what's happening now. You see what is happening now. All the conflict with Eritrea, Sudan is already another conflict. Somalia, you have seen what happened with all this Berbera Zaila issue. Even Kenya, there was some issues like that. So, we are affecting the whole Horn of Africa. So we are actually discussing, major key stakeholders are discussing the way forward. We have lost hope in a negotiation settlement in Ethiopia. And unfortunately, the international community has also ignored us. They only talk about, state stakeholders. They are not talking about, other stakeholders. And the change usually comes from the stakeholders, the opposition stakeholders. So that's the future we see. We see actually a very bright future now because for the first time, people believe we will never come together are talking together. It's not about only Somali question, about Ogaden question, or about Tigray question, or about Amhara question, or about Oromia question. We are talking really about the future of our children, all as a community, as a polity in Ethiopia, from all different nations. And when I see I've now met many leaders in the diaspora. I've talked to many leaders inside the country. There's now, I'm really hopeful that we are going to bring change now. So I'm not pessimistic now because I see one party rule will fail. And if it fails, unless we work very hard to bring a change, then that failure will affect all of us, not only us, Ethiopia, the other countries, Africa, and the Middle East even.
Dr. Abdirahman, I know that the politics in the Somali region is very intricate and it's very sophisticated as well because the Somali people live across borders and it requires its own interrogation. It requires its own wider aspect of conversation. Today's conversation was to understand what the status of your party is and what happened to it, and especially in the post 2018. And I thank you very much for joining me. I would like to have you back again to go just a little deeper than the surface that we did today to discuss about regional affairs. As I said, the Somali people. We have three centers of power when we talk about Somali. It's the Hargeisa, it's Mogadishu, and it's Jijiga. And it's something that really fascinates me a lot. And I hope to have you back in my podcast after this preliminary podcast that we have. So thank you very much for joining me today.
Well, Tsedale, thank you very much. And the team of Addis Standard. I hope we will meet back again in Addis Ababa with more maturity than before, with more experience now, and bring a real genuine change. As you saw, the media is one part of the state, the media, legislation, and the executive. And so we are part of the the executive or the political wing, the media wing. So you are bringing change also, and I hope you will continue addressing those questions, very hard questions. And I very high hopes for the people of Ethiopia in the near future.
Thank you.